Hello, I'm Leon Kazakos. I'm the current leader of the Southeastern Circuit. So what? So what? Well, the reason I'm here, the reason the circuit's here, is this: that for good Lord, about 10 to 15 years now, the circuit, certainly in London and the Southeast, has been dominated by the self-employed bar, and within that, with a heavy bias towards the publicly funded bar, and particularly the criminal bar. In recent years, mainly because of the well-known problems with the publicly funded bar, that has attracted the attention of the circuit, as the circuit has had to step in to try to solve the problems that governments and funding have caused to the family bar and the criminal bar. So there's obviously a reason that the circuit has been dominated by the self-employed bar and the criminal, and to a lesser extent family bar. But while I am predominantly a criminal practitioner, and yes, I am self-employed and have been since I started, it doesn't seem to me as leader for there to be now any reason for the circuit to be dominated by criminal practitioners, and there is no reason why it has to have a slant towards the self-employed bar, because the circuit is more than crime. The circuit is more than self-employment. The circuit is, or should be, for every single member of the bar who practices in the Southeast. And in the time, I was about to say the time that I've got left, which sounds dreadful, but in my time that I have got left as leader, which is until the end of next year, I am as keen as I can be to ensure that the balance on circuit is redressed, and that the circuit looks far more like the bar in the Southeast. And you know, and I know, that that isn't just crime, and you know, and I know, that that isn't just sets of chambers. So I suppose if I was sitting where you are sitting and listening to me bang on, speak, I would be asking, well, what's in it for me? Why should I? And I can help you to this extent, I think. What does the circuit provide? Well, a number of things. Firstly, and I think probably most importantly, what it provides is support. Support throughout your career at the bar, and support from the very start of your career at the bar. If advocacy is your thing, and there are walks of life in practice at the bar where it's not, but if it is, there is advocacy training and support, not just as a baby junior, but also through Keble College, Oxford, and the advocacy course that is run there by the circuit, that is and remains, I think I can say without fear of being corrected by anybody, the best advanced advocacy course in the world now. So there's advocacy support, professional development. If you are thinking, as we do as we get a little older in practice, about where our careers might go, what it might look like as we progress at the bar, professional development and help into applications for sitting as a district judge, as a recorder, applications for full-time judicial appointment as circuit judge, as deputy high court judge, as high court judge. If you wish to remain at the bar and look towards applications for silk, the circuit can help and does help, because there is informal mentoring and assistance, both by way of talk like this, but also one-to-one throughout your career. It's increasingly more the case now that where we used to join sets of chambers or firms and then not move, or join a particular specialism and then not move, there is now, as you'll know, movement between the self-employed bar and the employed bar, and vice versa. And that can be facilitated so much more easily if you are having those informal conversations through friends who are practicing on circuit, who might know what skills you might need if you wish to leave employment to chance your arm once again at the self-employed bar, or if you're looking in self-employment to move into employed practice. So that's the support. Second, education. And the circuit provides, which is the advantage of circuit, because we're not a specialist bar organisation, so we're not tied to any particular specialism. We provide education across a range of disciplines and a range of specialties. To give you some examples from this year, we have had talks on the psychology of memory in witnesses, to training in rape and serious sexual offending, to training on first principles of asset tracing, to training on recovery of the proceeds of crime. Next year, all being well, we plan a visit to The Hague, the better to educate our members in international law. We're not just an educational organisation, we are a representative organisation. I have, as leader, and the circuit has, access to the very senior judiciary and government. We have, in the last 3 months, put together responses to consultations to advance the case of the bar and the public, and the bar both employed and self-employed. So if you want the employed bar's case put to government, if you want the employed bar's case put to the senior judiciary, whatever that may look like, you ought to get involved. So education, representation, support. What else? Well, there's this. Someone to speak to. It sounds fairly woolly, but in fact it's important. Someone to speak to outside of your organisation, be that your set of chambers, be that your firm, be that your organisation, and someone who can provide objective support, and if they can't, to put you in touch with others who can. And so what those problems may look like may be, for instance, a difficulty with your firm where you simply don't want to go to the HR department, or having been to the HR department, you're not left with your problem resolved. If there's a difficulty within your firm or your set of chambers, if you're looking at disparity in pay between sexes, or disparity in pay between people of different colours, if you're looking at an artificial limit that you perceive on obtaining partnership, where could you raise that outside of your firm, where there may be a greater platform to have someone do something about it? And that, I say, should be the circuit. I'm delighted this evening to be able to introduce the two very senior practitioners from the employed bar who sit to my right. Immediately next to me, Heidi Stonecliffe, King's Counsel, is presently employed at the Crown Prosecution Service and has been there, I hope she'll forgive me, for nearly 2 decades. Before that, she worked as employed counsel at a solicitor's firm. She applied for and took silk in 2020. She is one of only 3 King's Counsel at the Crown Prosecution Service, and the first woman to take silk from the CPS. To her right, Rebecca Dix. Rebecca began her career at the bar at 2 Bedford Row, then chambers of William Clegg, King's Counsel, before moving to white collar crime, first to a firm, then to the Serious Fraud Office, where she was Associate General Counsel. She is now at Dentons, where she's counsel specialising in white collar crime. I'm going to turn first, if I may, to Heidi and then to Rebecca. So Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. As Leon's just said, I have spent pretty much the vast majority of my career in employed practice. I was called in 1996 and practiced just down the road at 2 Paper Buildings. And I remember not being taken on as a tenant. At the time, it felt like a devastating thing that had happened to me at that very early stage of my career. And I remember thinking at the time, what were the options open to me if I wanted to continue to practice as a barrister, not just an advocate, but as a barrister. All of us have been through that turmoil of bar school, the financial difficulties that some of us have suffered to go through that, the extra jobs that we've been doing. We really want to do this job. It's not just a whim. It's not, I think I'd like to be a barrister. So it felt very difficult at the time. And for me, in 1996, the options were very limited to what I could do. The only thing that I could do in order to practice as an advocate and to continue practicing in criminal law was in fact to dual qualify and become a solicitor, which is what I did for a very short period of time. And then I came cross qualified back. So I've done both sides of this, albeit for a short period of time. And so from around about 2000, I was employed in-house as a defence advocate, going to the Crown Courts at a time, and I say this to people who are employed who sometimes maybe feel a bit like you stand out, which is a good thing, but sometimes I remember going to court and walking into a robing room and people sort of saying, well, you're not a real barrister, can you leave? And I am encouraged to say that those days are long behind us, and I'm very pleased for the work that the Employed Bar Committee has done over the years to actually make that change. In 2006, I joined the Crown Prosecution Service at a time when Ken MacDonald, who was the DPP, had decided, and in fact, credit to him, had seen the value in employing barristers into the organisation to actually change things around. The Crown Prosecution Service had a particularly bad reputation at the time, cases were failing, and so he wanted to recruit barristers, people like us who have been trained from a very early stage to think analytically, to think strategically, and to think tactically, to see how they could change the course of some of the cases. And as it happens, there were a number of us that were taken in from defence practice. Again, another quite useful thing is to use your skills in the opposite direction to change that course. And the rest, as Leon has outlined, is history. As I say, have been in-house for pretty much my entire career. I've been at the Employed Bar for that length of time. So when I talk about the Employed Bar, I really do understand some of the difficulties, some of the challenges that people face, and sometimes some of the feelings of thinking, where do I fit in this profession? Where do I fit as a barrister? Being at the Employed Bar, to be frank, is not always without challenge. I think it's fair to say that we come across challenges within our organisations and also outside those organisations. And that really is, as Leon has said, where the circuits, the Southeastern Circuit in particular, because that's where we all are at the moment, can assist. Any of us, I think, practicing at the Employed Bar sometimes feel that we are a bit of an outlier. Now, I think that's a great thing because it sets you apart, particularly within your organisations as well. And it's always been something to me that I've tried to use as an advantage. I've tried to make a positive thing and make work for me. But again, that feeling of being a bit of an outlier can actually be really helped by the circuit. Because it provides, as Leon has said, and Leon and I have spoken about this at length over a number of conversations since we decided to organise this event, it can provide that independent, supportive body for all barristers who live and practice on the circuit, not those of us who are self-employed, not just those of us who are employed and self-employed, but everyone who lives and practice on the circuit. And that is regardless, I know that you've said this, Leon, but I think there is sometimes a perception that the circuit is for criminal barristers and the circuit is for people who go to court. It's not. It's the circuit that is for all barristers. That's employed, self-employed, whether you are in corporate practice, whether you're in criminal practice, family practice, it is for all of us. All of us who set off on that path, for some of us a long time ago, for others less time ago, who thought this is the profession I want to be a part of. The circuit is that profession, and it's really important to have that independent support. I just wanted to say a brief word about the Employed Bar Committee, because this is kind of the impetus as to why we ended up here this evening. The Employed Bar Committee, for those of you who know about it, it's part of the Bar Council. It's one of the specialist committees that's been set up to protect the interests, in particular in these circumstances, of people who are in employed practice. I joined the EBC just after I took Silk in 2020, and last year I was elected as vice chair, and at the end of this year I'm going to take over as chair from Stuart Alford, King's Counsel, so no pressure. But what was really important this year was that we published the Employed Bar Snapshot Report, and this kind of feeds into the work that we want to do alongside the circuit, getting people engaged with the circuit and the INS and the Bar Council. I was fortunate enough to chair one of the focus groups. So we had a number of focus groups, government departments, CPS, law firms. And I was really struck when I chaired that group for a few hours by how so many of the concerns and difficulties experienced by barristers who are employed were the same, regardless of practice area, regardless whether you're in corporate practice, criminal practice, wherever you are. The same concerns kept coming up. A feeling that was expressed by some that we can sometimes feel a bit like a square peg in a round hole within our own organisations. Do our employers know how to approach us as a barrister? There's sometimes that feeling, it's like, barrister don't really know what to do, it's hard. Do they know how to nurture our careers and career progression? Do they know how to help those who might have that ability and might have that drive and that determination to go on and take Silk? And I'm a big drum banger for anyone who feels that that is something that they want to do. Those impediments are not there anymore. If you can satisfy those competencies, then do it. Do they have the ability? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the wherewithal to help those who might want to consider judicial appointment, whether that's part-time or whether that's full-time judicial appointment? Do they, I know this sounds a bit weird, but do they actually know what to call us sometimes? We've heard all sorts of expressions. I mean, it's, you know, in my organisation, I'm not known as a Silk. I mean, sorry, for what it matters. I mean, Silk for most people in the world, it doesn't really mean anything, does it? But within my own organisation, it's like, well, should we call you King's Counsel, or are you a PCA, a Principal Crown Advocate, or are you a Crown Advocate, or are you this? I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But if they can't find a name for us, it's often very difficult to work out where our direction of travel actually is. And also, do they know how to best advance our practices, not just for our own ends, but also for the benefit of the firm or the organisation that we're working in? I think there's been a huge amount of progression over the years. There is still much to be done, but there's been a huge amount of progression over the years in terms of how we as barristers, with all of those amazing skills that we have, and they are unique and great skills that we pick up at bar school and along the way in our careers, do they know how to best use those? You know, forget about what they call us, frankly, do we really care, as long as it's within reason? But do they know how to actually use all those skills, and for our advantage, but also for theirs as well? And so Stuart Alford, King's Counsel, and I are doing as much as we can at the moment off the back of that snapshot report, after the back of that feedback, to increase visibility of those in employed practice, to encourage that progression, to encourage people to take that next step in their careers, to encourage diversity in the profession as well, and to ensure our members and the people at the employed bar are and those who we represent are actually heard. We, as some of you may already know, some of you have been in attendance at them, we've held a seminar on judicial appointment from employed practice at this inn. We will be holding a seminar in the new year to deal with King's Counsel appointments for anyone who is thinking about doing that. You know, is this something I can do? If it's not something I can do now, how would I best extend, expand, progress my practice to be able to satisfy those competencies? We all know it's an award for advocacy, but we need to start thinking laterally about our careers. And so with all of that in mind, and with Stuart McMillan's drive and determination, and mine and Stuart's feedback from the task forces and the focus groups, we decided that it was time that we approached our circuits. I say plural because obviously the Southeastern Circuit is the best circuit, obviously, but there are others. And we wanted to see what the circuits could do to further those of us at the employed bar, and what we, because it's not just about, oh, can we have some help? What we as employed barristers can contribute to the circuit engagement, can contribute, as Leon has said, to those discussions at high level in government, because some of us are working in government departments, to contribute to some of those sessions that might be held on asset recovery for those of us who are working in employed practice, where that's at the core of our business. And so I'm not going to say this to embarrass you, Leon, but I'm going to say it because some people may have a particular idea about the circuits. I'll be blunt. Some time ago, and not immediately, but some time ago, I had a particular idea. Are the circuits going to be welcoming of people in employed practice? Are the circuits going to recognise the skills that we have? Are the circuits going to be interested in having members of the employed bar as part of their membership? I sent an email to Leon, I mean, it's some months ago now, but I sent an email to Leon's, you have a PA, don't you? You have an assistant.
For my shame.
You have a PA. He is exceptionally busy, and that's why. And literally within minutes, Leon was calling me on my mobile. Within minutes, we were having a very lengthy conversation about the circuit, about the employed bar, about what the employed bar could contribute to the circuit and what the circuit can contribute to the employed bar. It's very much a two-way street. And I think by the end of that discussion, I'm as cynical as they come, but I was convinced, and I hope you will be by what Leon said this evening, that this is not tokenism. This is genuine desire to have a varied membership of circuit, to have circuit made up of barristers from all parts of the profession and barristers from all sides of the profession in terms of employed and employment. There is a genuine and a firm desire to encourage more members of the bar, of the profession as a whole, to join. But, and something you and I spoke about, certainly at the very beginning, Leon, it's not just about joining. It really isn't. It's about engaging positively. It's about contributing. It's about using all of those experience that some of us have had in employed practice that you won't get at the self-employed bar. You know, working within a big corporate environment, as I say, working within a government department, to contribute to the work that the circuit is doing actively. And as I say, not tokenism, but to ensure that the circuit is representative of our profession. More members of the employed bar joining the circuit means that eventually there are going to be more members of the employed bar in some of the executive positions. At some point, there may in fact be an employed barrister who is going to be leader of the circuit. And that really is about the sort of progression that we are looking to gain. Not just employed barristers in silk, not just employed barristers on the bench, employed barristers across the Bar Council, across the inns, and across our circuits as well. So I do encourage all of you to join. Leon's already set out what the circuit can do for you. That level of support, and dealing particularly as someone from the employed bar, working within big organisations, all of those feedback points that I received, I remember thinking that there's a need for something outside our profession. As Leon has said, you know, you go to your HR department, but you might not feel comfortable about pushing a particular point. The circuit can help. You may get pushback from your organisation about taking silk, if that's something you want to do, or maybe part-time judicial appointment if you're trying to explain to your employers, well, look, this is something I really want to do. It's going to further our work, but also it means that I'm going to need some time to do part-time employment. Having that support, having that backup behind you, that backup of the profession that we all joined all that time ago, and having it speak up and having us speak up for it as well, Mentoring as well. Leon has spoken very briefly about the Silk mentoring, but I know from our discussions that there are mentoring opportunities for people to mentor people who may have disabilities, social mobility mentoring, Silk mentoring, JAC, judicial appointment mentoring as well. Again, outside the immediate confines of our employers and our government departments, from an organisation that understands and recognises the qualities that we have as barristers. Training, Leon has already talked about, and teaching. You know, for those of you who do advocacy on a regular basis, and for those of you who are at that 5 to 15 year call stage and you're doing advocacy, Keeble, yes, I accept. I think all of us would agree is not for the faint-hearted. It's grueling, but it's not just for the self-employed bar. I was asked this year to teach at Keeble, which is a huge honour. I feel very privileged to be able to do that. I couldn't do it this year because I was about to start a trial in that period of time. But next year I'll be doing it. And this is what I mean about getting engaged, having your voices heard and being part of the new profession that's coming through, employed or self-employed. And involvement and visibility in the decisions that are being made that affect our profession across the board. And let's face it, networking as well. You know, we can sometimes feel a little bit siloed in some of our government departments and some of our firms. Come to these events, meet people who are outside your practice area, meet people who are in sympathetic practice areas to yours. If you're thinking, do you know what, I'm thinking of a change. Meet people who are at the self-employed bar if you're thinking about that move to chambers. Meet people from other parts of the profession, because the profession is becoming far more fluid. Certainly from our membership in the employed bar, we have members who are moving back and forth into chambers. None of us will rule it out because our careers evolve. And if we are part of circuit, we have access to people who are in those positions and who will be able to talk about what you need to do, what you might need to move practice areas, what you might need to do if you wanted to move into self-employed practice. So it's about meeting other people, meeting people who started off in exactly the same position as all of us, at doing the bar vocational course or the bar professional training course, as it's now called. All of us taking those tentative steps. We have all done it. Then let's continue to be part of that profession. So I encourage all of you to get involved. To be frank, I wish I had done sooner, because I think some of the assistance that I needed when I was thinking about applying for Silk, some of the assistance that I think I needed when I was trying to progress through the advocacy structure and through the organisation that is that massive behemoth of the civil service, the CPS, I think I would have greatly benefited from it. Just a brief conversation with Leon when we first spoke made me convinced of that. And get involved, foster that one bar mentality that we're all striving towards. And can I say, please get involved in your circuit, please join, and also please continue to be involved in your INS and the Bar Council. There is much work to be done, but the more of us who get involved, the quicker that work is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think there's really much else to say after that very persuasive submission. Has everybody signed up for the SCC? Since, if you haven't, then I'll take 5 more minutes of your time just to sort of run through. I think it may be helpful just to have a bit of a snapshot of my own career. So I would say I divided up into 2 parts. So the first part being self-employed, working in the criminal law chambers. And when you mentioned Keeble, that certainly brings back memories of being part of that advocacy training. And certainly in my day, and I think our day, the VHS videotapes were being used and playback. And I think probably now you have some very swift ways of doing playback on, I don't know, what do they use these days?
They use iPads, don't they?
iPads. And
We're terribly tech.
yeah. Anyway, much swifter than it was for me. But, you know, that's what, for me, what that meant by the Southeastern Circuit when I was in Chambers. It was that kind of thing that comes back to my memory, and I still remember it now, so many years down the line. And it really was an excellent course, and it's still going, which is great, and it's being perfected as we go along. And hearing that employed barristers are being asked to be part of that, and we, as I speak as part of the employed bar, really want to see that continue and grow. Certainly for myself, I do a lot of training at the inns as well, and at my current place, which is at the law firm, I provide training, and at the Serious Fraud Office is providing training. There is, that continues in your career, and the two can complement each other at the employed bar and the self-employed bar. So that's really good to hear that that's sort of progressing now, certainly at Keble level. Again, at the self-employed bar, I remember the dinners, the social networking side of the South Eastern Circuit. And at the time, I probably didn't really understand how valuable that was in my career as a junior barrister. It's a real opportunity to meet and socialise with your colleagues, but also the judiciary, which was fantastic, seeing the judge in real life, as I would say, socialising, and a very different personality sometimes from what they were like on the bench. And it was really refreshing just to be able to go and speak to them for 5 minutes. And that made such a difference. You felt part of a community. And it was really important for me during that time at the self-employed bar. So that was the first part of my career. Then I moved over to the employed practice, which is now coming up to 10 years as well. So I can feel like I quite squarely fit between the two. And I have to admit, and I shamefully said when I was asked to come to speak at this panel, the South Eastern Circuit, for me, I'm not sure I haven't actually renewed my membership, have I? I'm not sure if I have. And obviously I have, otherwise I wouldn't be on this panel. But, and it's been really educational just for me to understand and really hear legitimately, as you're saying, genuinely what is going on and why it's so important, even in the employed bar practice, certainly for government. I know we spoke about it before. When I was in government before, I noticed that moving from a law firm to government, when you have to sign up for memberships, you have to pay for it yourself half the time, and that put me off. I didn't join up a lot of committees or working groups or whatever it was, because I couldn't afford necessarily to do that like I did in the law firm, which you just expense half the time. And so we did quite a lot with another organisation I work with BACFI, which is an employed bar forum for specialist industry, and we asked for membership for that to be really dropped down to a reasonable level, so that it wouldn't make that an inclusive or exclusive membership. And certainly, again, there's more progression again with government, with their learning vouchers, both at the Crown Prosecution Service and at the Serious Fraud Office, that you can use. It's money that you're given to use however you want for your learning, and you can use that as part of payment towards the membership. So again, you're not having to pay out of your own pocket and be disadvantaged compared to people, certainly in the employed bar in a law firm. Obviously self-employed is a bit different, but I think it's important to remember that, to use that voucher. And we've mentioned it a couple of times this evening, and you may well have heard of it or not. One bar, I mean, how many people in the room have heard of it other than this evening? Are you familiar with that term? Hands up if you have heard about it. Yeah, still not everybody, and I think that's fair, because even for myself, moving to the employed bar, it was words that kept coming out, and I didn't really understand what was everybody talking about. One bar, yes, I'm a member of the bar. Are you not? I don't understand. And it took me some time to realise. I certainly had the same experience when I first left. It felt that potentially treated differently in a way. Or is it because you didn't make it in the self-employed bar? Is that why you've gone to the employed bar? Did you not make money? Is that why you moved over? None of those reasons were the reason why I left. But it was certainly stereotypical questions that I was being asked. So the reason I mentioned about the one bar, what it means to me, I think it's different for different people potentially, but I think it's pretty consistent these days. And Heidi's already spoken about it, but it's very much the adaptability of the bar as a profession, your transferable skills. You can use your skills, and you're trained to an excellent standard through the bar course, through your inns, through chambers, but you can use a lot of those skills outside of chambers. It's not restricted to there. And for me personally, that's moving to a law firm, work with government. I was working for government when I was in chambers, but now I was working as an employed barrister in chambers in the Serious Fraud Office for almost 6 years. Incredible experience. I'm saying that because Sarah Wilson's here, obviously. It was a really good experience, even so. But you've got people working in banks, you've got people working in in-house corporate positions, in all types of different positions. Certainly in my practice in white collar, you'll have people working in the investigations department, in the big corporates, the big listed companies, all sorts of different types of positions that you could be thinking about. And for my own part, that was at a law firm, that's where I am now. But the one bar means that what I do in my law firm is very often similar to what everyone else would be doing in the self-employed bar. I may not be going to court and going to, advocating in front of a judge or persuading a jury, but the issues that I have to face day to day are very similar to the self-employed bar. And I thought I'd just give some examples of the sort of 4 things that really stuck out to me over the years, and from my own experiences, they are not limited to this. And we've already touched on a few of them already, but the judicial application, there is an underrepresented number from the employed bar. Solicitors have been identified as underrepresented for the judiciary, but so is the employed bar, and it's not necessarily that well recognised. And I think membership at the SEC in particular would really help with that, from what you've said already. That may help and encourage more people in the employed bar to think about a career in the judiciary. I mean, there are so many reasons why people don't necessarily do that, but maybe that's something that the 2 bars, 1 bar, can work together and help in how to make that more accessible for people in the employed bar. The second one, I've sort of had my own personal experience, is the work-life balance and well-being. I was the chair at the Wellbeing Bar Committee for the Bar Council last year, and I found it really valuable at first it's quite daunting being the chair of a bunch of self-employed barristers ultimately, but I felt confident to do it because I have been at chambers before, but also I still work with barristers. I'm still in touch with the bar and the self-employed bar. But it was a really good way of really keeping in touch with what was going on, and it was just at the height of the pandemic. So I was having to hear firsthand from barristers that often I could be instructing through the Serious Fraud Office or the CPS were instructing, and hearing firsthand what they were dealing with every day and not connecting with each other, roving rooms empty, chambers empty. How were people keeping connected? How were you all looking after each other? How were you dealing with hardship? And these are all conversations that I could have from the employed bar with the self-employed bar, working together, finding solutions and working through that as a team, as one bar. So that for me was probably one of the most striking examples I've had. Thirdly was the inclusion and diversity. Again, I do quite a bit of that, starting pretty much at the Serious Fraud Office, where I had the opportunity to be part of the pilot for the 10,000 Black Internship project. And I managed to get involved purely because of my connections with the self-employed bar again, and the Bar Council in particular. I thought, right, well, this would be great if we can also have the SFO on that panel. You've got a whole list of chambers, but can we also have an employed bar presence on that internship? So for 6 weeks, the intern would have some time at different chambers, but also in the employed bar and also the CPS. And that was the first time that's ever been done, and that's a rolling continuation that continues on. And that's what that means, one bar. So there's full representation, full experience and exposure of both career paths with that individual, and hopefully that continues more and more as we go on each year. I know it's still going. And you've already touched about the training, so I won't go over that again, but continued professional development continues in a law firm. It doesn't stop. So I provide training in my law firm to the new practitioners as much as I do it in a temple as well. So it's a combined effort, and we learn from each other. I learn from everybody else as much as they learn from me. So I just wanted to sort of really provide some examples, certainly from my own experience, of what one bar looks like to me. And I think joining the Southeastern Circuit, it's not putting too much of a high pressure on it, but I'm hoping that continues, and really looking forward to hearing more about the events coming up. Thank you.
Okay, we have one question online. Have you got questions in the room to start with, sir?
Thank you to all 3 of you. That was highly interesting and instructive. Mr. Kazakos, when you started speaking so eloquently, I was contemplating the question, but it was not what's in this for me. It was what's in this for you, because you're the one sat there pitching effectively. And it was a pretty hard sell. And I had someone from the Bar Council on the phone to me the other day pitching this. And so there's obviously the cynical response that one would have. And there's obviously the kind of corporate style reasons you articulated, but really, why are you pitching this?
What's in it for the circuit? or what's in it for me personally?
What are you representing?
What's in it for the circuit? Yeah, well, the circuit, as you'll know, the circuit is, if you're going to design the bar now, you wouldn't design the circuits. It wouldn't look anything like it. But the circuits they're organisations that surround the bar. They seem to have grown up historically and organically. And their development of people's practice areas, as Rebecca was saying, it improves your professional development almost at a stage early on when you don't realise it's happening. But the advantage now, as far as I'm concerned, is that the South Eastern Circuit is a modern organisation. It's progressive, and most importantly, it's agile, which means it's got a very broad remit. So what's in it for the circuit is the more barristers the circuit has from the broadest remit possible, then the better able it is to advance the case for the bar, full stop, whatever that area or section of the bar might look like. And because it's a very agile organisation, the circuit, it's not particularly hidebound with protocols and procedures. It can work as simply as this. If you have, as a member, a decent case for a theme, or for an event, or for a programme, or for something you would like to do, the circuit can get behind it and will get behind it, and then you have a platform for whatever it is that you, as a representative of the employed bar, are trying to achieve. Does that help you?
Yeah, it's better. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to accuse me of giving the hard sell? So, how can we help you? Yeah.
So, following on from that question.
Yes.
So I'm right.
I'll have a microphone.
Is that better? Following on from that question, I'm at the beginning stages of all of this, right? So it's interesting to see, because I didn't know about the circuits, didn't know about employed bar, didn't know about all of that kind of stuff until very recently. I'm part of the BCFA, FI, I think it is, as well. And what I didn't know was when you talk about the help and the mentoring, how accurate that is in terms of people getting access to that earlier on. Something that was mentioned at one of the employed bar was we didn't even know how many different organizations or different fields or different industries form that. So I suppose my ask to you is, as someone that would most likely join or would want to join, two things I would need or would be looking for is the ability to give back. So if we get involved, we can then pass this thing on. And that's for my mountaineering background, you always have to put the pantyhose back in. But more importantly, to give not only the visibility of what the employed bar is, but what it actually defines as, because that's what we don't know. People doing the bar course only know it about get pupillage, get this, get that, and then try and get tenancy. And then you're looking at the statistics for that. But actually what's more interesting is to say that there's multiple paths and multiple ways and multiple reasons. And this is the example of X, Y, and Z. That's kind of what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, you'd be, just to talk about, if I can pick up on mentoring. So the Circuit magazine, which has its readership is not quite as wide as Private Eye, maybe rather more limited. But the Circuit magazine ran about 3 editions ago a series of articles on mentoring and on those organisations that are surrounding those who are applying for pupillage, to try to increase their visibility and to assist. We had this year an online only event, only because of access, with an organisation called Bringing Disability to the Bar, to encourage those who were looking for pupillage or looking to start a career at the bar, effectively to make themselves difficult, to make themselves busy, to try and get themselves mentors, and when they have a barrister mentor, to ensure that they make a fuss so that the barrister who is busy in practice remembers they have a mentor, to try and empower them, and also to encourage members of the bar to step forward. So I've mentored for Bringing Disability to the Bar. I've mentored for a number of other organisations as well. And you're right. It's limited, isn't it? Because I'm saying, well, you're looking for my path. You're looking for pupillage. How can I help with that? But if we've got mentors from the employed bar as well, then the failure, if it is a failure, I'm not sure it is, but the failure to get an interview, to failure to get pupillage, doesn't necessarily look like the disaster it looks like at the moment, because you'd be able to say, a career at the bar also looks like this. And that would be of immense help. It really would.
I think it's about having different parts of the profession represented at various levels of the profession. I think I remember Lady Hale saying that there's no point in us just encouraging progression and talking about it. We actually have to show progression. We have to show people from different parts of the organisation. We have to show diversity at the very top end of our profession, whether that's in silk or in the general counsel roles, in the judiciary. We have to show that diversity of the profession at the top end to actually encourage others to go, oh, so you can do it that way. Oh, you can do that. As you say, it's about not knowing what's out there and not knowing what those other organisations are, where you can practice from, where you can do pupillage. The circuit, I think, has that capacity to bring everyone together in the sense that we're all barristers. How that's changed over the years. You know, from my time when I started out, being a barrister was, you know, in my head was wandering around in court with a wig and gown on. It's so much more than that, thank God. You know, it's across business, it's across corporate environments, it's across all parts of the profession. And I think being part of circuit means that you get exposed to those other ideas. Oh, I hadn't considered that I could use these skills which are transferable to go from this to this. Oh, I hadn't realised that this particular body offered pupillage. I hadn't realised that I could actually practice as an advocate, if that's what you want to do, in this organisation. And I think it's just about opening up that possibility across the board. So it's a good point, because how do you know what's out there unless you speak to other people? So
certainly for my own part, I mean, I moved careers sort of halfway through. I had never planned that that was the way it was going to go. It just went that way, to the way that my practice developed. It just became the natural progression. But I had no idea about the employed bar when I first started. It wasn't an option. It wasn't something I was planning to do. So, but it would have been good. I think it's still good to understand it. I think certainly for my time, it was more about you either went self-employed or the GLD, or you went into government. There wasn't anything in between. And I'm not sure there was that much. I think there is so much more now, and more people are talking about. So now that you've heard it once, now it's one of those things, you'll hear it all the time, and it will start to develop and it will start to make more sense. So thank you for listening and sort of taking it in, because it is different, but it's fantastic. You know, I really enjoyed both sides of the fence, whichever way it is.
Can I just read one question from online? Both of you.
oh, thanks.
Both of you. It's been said before that progression in the employed bar is a lot slower than in chambers. Is that your experience? And if so, what is being done to combat that at the junior stroke pupil level, in my brackets, if you know?
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to go. I mean, I think it really depends on how you define progression. And for me, it's progression is about being rich in knowledge and sort of developing your practice in that way. It's not about what you're doing, what your title is, and recognition in that way. So I think I sort of interpret it in that way, and I've really sort of enjoyed, and that's one of the reasons why I left Chambers, because I wanted to develop so much more. I wanted to know what was out there in big, bad or good world. So for me, I felt that there has been progression because there's flexibility, that I can move. You know, I don't have to stay where I am. I hate leaving when I leave. But it's for that reason. I just want to keep growing. I want to keep trying and testing new things and developing myself and my own continual professional development. So I think that's how I sort of take that answer. It's more about that type of progression, and yes, there has been in the employed bar because there's more movement.
I mean, I think from my own experience, you know, I set out, and I appreciate that it's purely a sort of personal experience from being at the criminal bar. But if I'm using my experience, you know, I set out in chambers to become a criminal barrister because that's what I wanted to do. I think at the time I set out on the path to practice in '96, you know, the idea of taking silk was like crazy. But I knew that if that was going to happen, it's around about that sort of 20-year mark, isn't it, really? So for me, yeah, that it might have been harder in the sense of having to push harder for the opportunities, but I'm kind of no different in terms of call to the majority of people who take silk at the self-employed bar. I took silk after 24 years, and quite a bit of that time was actually spent when I was a solicitor or, you know, in a hiatus. When I left the solicitor's practice, it was so awful for various other reasons, just purely because of the solicitors, that I went off and ran a restaurant for a year because I just thought, I don't want to be a lawyer. So you take a year out of that. But, you know, so in a way, it's not been that slower. I don't think it's necessarily about speed. I think it's more about finding the opportunities to progress. And I think a lot of the work that we're doing with the EBC and hopefully now with Circuit and with the Inns and with Bar Council is actually making that progression easier. Because, as I say, I go back to that point, if other people see people from the employed bar progressing, then it gives them that idea that I can do that as well. And they've got people that they can go to through the Circuit. We've got the mentoring sessions, particularly for those who are wanting to apply for judicial or silk appointment, but for any side of development. So I think from my own personal experience, I grew up at the employed bar at a time when it was kind of out there to be at the employed bar, particularly as an advocate. I have seen huge change, genuine, huge change. And we are employed barristers now represented on Bar Council, we're represented in silk, we're represented in the Inns. That has come about in the last 20 years. And I think if that representation continues, then I think progression is just going to continue at the same pace, regardless of whether you're employed or self-employed. The work that the EBC is doing in terms of pupillage, we are looking at how pupillage is provided within organisations. CPS has a pupillage provision. I and Mike James, who's one of the other silks in the organisation, actively contribute into that. And I know, Leon, you and I have spoken that you've had pupillage sessions run through the Circuit as well. It's not just pupils who are in self-employed practice, that's pupils across the board. So for me, I'm in the same position as I would have been if I'd been in chambers. It was a bit harder, but I think those opportunities are now opening up for other people, if that answers the question. Probably not. I sound like a defendant now, talking all the way around the subject.
I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not actually qualified to answer that question, having been in self-employment since it started. Are there any other questions from anybody who has a burning desire to ask one? If you don't want to ask it in a public forum, then the three of us are going to remain as we repair to the room just behind this one for some refreshments. So if you don't want to ask it now, then please feel free to approach us at any point. Right. Go for your public question. Hi.
I'm not sure if it's a deliberate omission, but you've not actually told us how to join or what it costs.
Leon.
Right. So because the circuit's a modern organisation. There's a website, and if you go onto the website and you click on the membership button, it will take you to a page and give you a form to download and an email address to send it to. The circuit, you still need to be proposed by a member of the circuit. If you do not know a member of the circuit and you wish to be proposed, email me. I will propose you. Membership at the moment is under 5 years. I know this.
I'm just checking.
Membership at the moment from 0 to 5 years costs £25. Membership fees are going to go up this year because they have not gone up since 2004, and we need to ensure that revenue is there to put on the events we want to put on. but I think it's going to go up from £25 to £30 if you're under 5 years course. So I hope that's not too serious a hike. It is going up very significantly from 75 to 125 for those who are in silk. But I've and the committee have rather taken the view that if you can apply for silk and you can get silk, then you should be paying for the junior members of the bar to support the organisations that support them. So get online, download the form, fill it in. If you don't have a proposer, email it to me, leader@southeastcircuit.org.uk, and then I can get it to Aaron Dolan, who is the circuit administrator, and then you will be a member. What certain sets of chambers do, if you're in an organisation which has a number of members of the employed bar, and that organisation has an administrator or a central point of contact where you want to organise it so that there are a few of you who year on year retain membership of the circuit, then you can email Aaron and Aaron can organise that so that that runs yearly without you having to take on the individual contribution. Does that answer the question?
What about those of us between 5 and silk?
Between 5 and silk at the moment, I can't remember. Actually,
So you do need me to go back to the fee. Yeah, over 5 years,
at the moment,
£50.
50. That is going to go up, I think, to 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if we can do 2 for 1 for anyone in the room.
Do a bog off.
I don't think I'm permitted by either the treasurer or by the circuit committee to start making unilateral decisions as to entry. What I will say is that there are the circuit events that we put on are for circuit members. The circuit news is for circuit members, and for instance, the rape and serious sexual offending seminar we sold out, I think, within 2 hours, and there are any number of members of the bar who would have wanted to come to that, but it is circuit members only, so you get priority. In about 3 weeks' time, and for the first time, which I'm very proud of, the circuit is putting on an event for not quite every first 6 pupil in the southeast, because there isn't space in any room for every first 6 pupil, but we have the first 100 through the door, effectively to say to them, congratulations, you've beaten the competition, you're a member of the bar, and to look around the room and to make contacts right at the start of your career with those who are also capable of getting pupillage, whether that is in chambers or at the employed bar. So you start to build those networks and friendships that should, I hope, last a career and last a lifetime. But again, that's only open and was only really open to those sets of chambers who have historically taken an interest in the circuit. Fortunately, that, as we looked at it, was pretty much historically every member of every set of chambers in the circuit. And I don't know how much uptake we had from the employed bar. We certainly went out.
Yeah,
to the
we
employed
did.
Bar.
I don't think we had a huge amount of uptake, but I think it was something that if it runs again next year, which I believe it will. We will be publicising, because I think getting you guys here this evening, sort of almost evangelising about the circuit. If you guys join and you find courses on there that are useful, you go to events, it means that will filter down. And I am hoping next year that we can tie in with the EBC, and I see Stuart McMillan nodding his head before I'm volunteering us to do something, but we tie in with the EBC and we actually encourage more people who are in employed practice as pupils at that really, really early part of your career to engage and actually to go along to those events as well. As you say, it's a brilliant opportunity to meet other people who are just starting out at that terrifying, it is a terrifying time in your first 6. At that terrifying time in your first 6, and just to meet people and actually just talk to other people who are going through the same fear as you are. So yeah. Cool.
Any other questions at all? Right, Master Lawson, we're done.
Thank you, Master Lawson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna get that out. Thank you.